Hello, dear friends. This is going to be the second video in the George Gurdjieff series, which is pertaining to law of seven and law of three. Right. So let's have a quick recap about what we did in the first video. We discussed about the anagram. Right. The anagram has three basic symbols, which is there. The first symbol is the circle, which is also called as everything or oneness or absolute. The second one is the triangle, which forms the second fundamental law of the universe, which is called as law of three. It is also called by various names. One of them is called as sacred Triamazikamno, right? So this is the second part, right? And you can see this in terms of various religions. You can refer to the first video and see details into that. And we have the first law, which is called as law of seven, law of vibration, law of octaves, or you can also call it as the law of Heptaparaparshinokh. Right now, law of vibration is of eminent importance to us. Why? Because this is how we relate to WD Gan, because WD Gan has been talking to us about law of vibration. So it becomes very important for us to understand this law of vibration. Now, before we go exactly to this law of seven, which is law of vibration, we need to understand very basic and fundamental three thing which is there, and that is called as octave. So let's try to understand the definition of octave, because this will be very important for us. Before we go to law of seven and law of three, it is very important for us to understand the octaves first of all, because if we are able to understand the octaves, we'll be have the interpretations for law of three as well as law of seven. So let's go towards octaves. We go to the definition of octaves, which is the eighth full tone above a given tone, having twice as many vibrations per second, or below a given tone, having half as many vibrations per second. Also, the interval of 8 diatonic degrees between a tone and either of its octaves. Right now, what we understand from this octaves is one basic thing, that is having twice as many vibrations per second, or below a given tone having half as many vibrations per second. Now, this can be also told in a simple way, is either it doubles or it halves, right? So it either doubles, that is twice, or it halves, that is becomes one half, right? So this is what, and this is how we can understand at the basic level which is there for anagram, right? So this becomes our first and initial thing. Let's go to the further part, right, and try to understand more about this. So we go to this previous book of ours, right, and the book is the quest for free energy, understanding nature, right? So you can definitely go through these details, and we'll again come to the same basic symbol which is called as anagram, right? So ana is 9, and gram is model, right? So this is what we basically understand. Now, the way the anagram is there for all of us, right? If you see this, right, the flow of energy, which becomes very important for us to understand, right? Now, the third symbol which was there into that part is there of the anagram. In the anagram is law of seven, and if you see that, yes, it passes from one point to another. That is, if we start from here, right? So if we go from 1, it goes to 4, from 4 to 2, 2 to 8, 8 to 5, 5 to 7, and from 7 it goes to 1. So this is just if we put across all the numbers together, right? Now the question arises over here is why it is in such a way, right? So if we ask the questions why it is in such way, then probably we will be able to get the answer. And the answer to that, let's go to the answer, which is that now suppose we have, if we go for the law of 7 as such, right? And if we try to divide the number 7 into 7 equal parts, right? So if you go for equals, right, what we can do is we can go by 1 by 7, 2 by 7, 3 by 7, 4 by 7, 5 by 7, 6 by 7, 7 by 7, right? So what I'll do is I'll just try to interpret it over here. And this is how the numbers have been written. So if I go for 1 by 7, 2 by 7, 3 by 7, 4 by 7, 5 by 7, 6 by 7, and 7 by 7, right? Let's see what the answer is there. Now, if I look at the first answer, it is 1 by 7 is 0.142857. So it is 0.142857. right? Now this becomes the first and very important part for us. If I go for 2 by 7, it is 0.285714. Right? Now, if I look at the second number and the first number, it is 285714. It is 285714. Right? And if I look at the third number, it is 0.428571. So it is 428571. And if I look it over here, if in this number, if I just try to probably go away with the one, which is the first number after point, it is 42857. Right? So what I see over here is over the numbers, that is 1 by 7, 2 by 7, 3 by 7, 4 by 7, 5 by 7, 6 by 7, or 7 by 7. For all these numbers, the numbers are the same and they keep on recurring, right? So the series there 142857, which is 142857. If I look for the second number, it is 28574. So it is 2857,142. Again, the series goes on in the same way. It is 3 by 7, 42857. It is 42857. If I go for the fourth number, that is 4 by 7, it is 571428. It is 571248, right? So this series is there, which probably goes on recurring. That is one of the most important and beautiful thing about number 7, right? So this is how the number comes into picture, and that's why we get this series which is there of 142857, right? And now if you represent it over here in terms of the anagram, it is 142857. Right? Now, this would be very helpful for us in terms of trading. How that would be helpful? Probably we can go to the practical part in a different way. But here, let's try to stick to the theoretical part and then probably jump to the practical part later on. Because first of all, let's understand the basic part and go to the theory. From the theory to the practical part. So it is 1, we go to 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. So it is like 1, 2, you go backwards, and from backwards you go further to 8. Right? So it is 1, you go to 2, 4, and from 4 you go backward, which is probably like a retracement, and from 4 we go further towards 8, and from 8 probably we again get a retracement, we go further, and from this 7 we move across to the next target. Right? And then the cycle continues, or probably the cycles do keep on continuing. Right? So this is just a basic glimpse, right? We'll try to go more off into details of this part. Right? So this becomes the basic and fundamental thing which is there. Now, if I go ahead with these parts, right, and try to understand more about the details, right? If I try to understand more about the details of this, probably I'll be able to uncover certain further things which are there. Now, what are these further things which are there? Let's try to understand. Right? So we have something called as octaves. What is octaves? Octaves are this beautiful words which are do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, and again do. Right? So we start with do, and we again go back after do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti to do again. So this is how the vibrations either keep on doubling, or probably if I get from the last do to the first do, it keeps on going halfway. Right? So let's try to go more of into details of this and probably try to understand and analyze over here. So let's say if I do, and I have these numbers, right? So if I just only go for 2-digit numbers, what would be there? This is 0.14. So 0.14. And if I probably try to round it off, it would be 0.15. Right? Same way it is 0.28. So it comes to 0.3. So 0.30. 0.428. So if it is 428, it is 0.43. So if it is 0.43, I'll be just rounding up to the next or nearest 5-digit number. So it is 0.45, right? It would be either 5 or 0. So it is 0.45. Again, 4 by 7 is 0.57. So 57 would be coming to 57. It would be 0.6. So I'll be going for 0.6. 5 by 7 is 0.714. So it would be 0.72. I'll be going for, let's say, approximately to 0.75. Again, it is 6 by 7, 0.85, 0.856. So it would be like 0.9. Right? I'm just taking it for easy purpose, right? And then 7 by 7 is 1. So again, it would be 1, right? So it is not 0.1. I beg your pardon for that, but it would be purely 1. Right? So yes, this comes to 7 by 7 is 1. Right? Now, this is the first initial thing which is there and which is important for us to understand, right? So if I look at these things in terms of octaves, what is octaves is either doubling, right? It is either doubling or to the half part. So if I look over here, 0.15, it is 0.5. Yes, it doubles to 0.3, and from 0.3, if it doubles across, it should be going to 0.6, right? So somewhere around, probably I am able to match this thing, right? So from 0.15, it is doubling to 0.3, I beg your pardon. From 0.3, it goes to 0.6, and from 0.6, probably it should be going to 1.2. But probably things are not been matching, right? Again, if I look at this structure probably in a different way, let's try to analyze it in different parts so that it will be easier, because 7 is a odd number, probably it may not be matching. So if we go from 7 towards octave, that is 8, let's try to see what would be the difference for this part. So from 7, what we go is we go towards 8. Now we have number 8, and so we go across with the same division which is there. We divide it into 7 parts or maybe 8 equal parts, because we have 8, which is octave. So what I do is I have 0, I start from 0, I go for 1 by 8, 2 by 8, 3 by 8, 4 by 8, 5 by 8, 6 by 8, 7 by 8, and 8 by 8, right? So if I go across through this and try to divide that into same manner in terms of fraction, I have 0.125. Next is 0.25, 0.375, 0.5, 0.625, 0.75, 0.875, and 1, right? Now, if I see 3 by 8 is not exactly 0.7, 0.375, but I've just rounded up to that number, right? So yes, this will be there for 3 by 8, and this will be there for 5 by 8. These two numbers specifically, right? Rest of the numbers approximately come to the same part, right? So again, if I look at this 0.125, 0.125, if I double that, it goes to 0.25, right? Probably it's working. From 0.25, if I double it across, it goes to 0.5. And from 0.5, if I double it across, it goes to 1. So probably by doing just a minor change from this part, that is by 7 to 8, I probably am able to define or maybe understand something in terms of octaves, which is either half or double, either half or double. So I'm able to have the same thing. I'll just repeat to you. We cannot consider 0, because anything which is multiplied by 0 would be 0. We cannot divide maybe half of that or maybe double of that. It doesn't matter. It will be the same thing. So we need to start with a number. So if it is 0.125, double of that is going to be 0.25, double of that is going to be 0.5, double of that is going to be 1. So probably this is making some sense for us, right? So if I have it in terms of probably fraction and try to see it how it is there, 1 by 8. So 1 by 8 would be 1 by 8, 2 by 8 would be 1 by 4. We cannot go for an exact fraction, that is 3 by 8. It becomes a bit odd. So what we are doing is we are trying to put or maybe displace two things, right? What are the displacements? The 3 by 8 part and 5 by 8 part, we would be displacing it and taking it to the nearest rounding off, probably to the better fraction, which is 1 by 3, and second is 2 by 3. Now, this is a small difference that we are doing out over here. We'll talk about this difference probably in the next coming parts, because it is again to be explained in detail. It is one of the laws of creation which has been changed. So there were changes which were during creation and after creation. So this was the change which was there after creation, and that should be making some for sense for us. So that's why we had just made this small change. Now, if you see, if we divide 1 by into 3 equal parts, it should be 1, 1 by 3, 2 by 3, and then probably 3 by 3, which could be coming to 1. So if we divide this entire parts into 3, that is 1 by 3, 2 by 3, and 3 by 3, that is coming to 1. So this is probably in alignment with the law of 3. Now, what is law of 3? Let's try to understand that. So for law of 3, we have a triangle, equilateral triangle. So 1, 2, and 3. These 3 points are there, which should be coming up together. And it's like this triangle. This is 3, 6, 9. Right? So probably this is 3, 6, 9. Yes, this is how it should be bifurcated across. And to the number 369, probably we should be coming or maybe taking that separately, because that again becomes a very exhaustive topic. 369 is probably you will be able to relate that with Tesla. So yes, of course, we'll be taking that separately. So law of 7, law of 3. So we have these 3 numbers which are there. And what is there about law of 3? Now, if we try to correlate that with law of 3, it is a new arising from the previous horizon through the Harnell Triamazikamno, right? The process of which is actualized thus. The higher blends with the lower in order to actualize the middle and thus becomes either higher for the preceding lower or lower for the succeeding higher, right? A new arising from the previous arisen through the Harnell Miasnell, the process of which is actualized thus. The higher blends with the lower in order to actualize the middle. So we have three parts, that is the higher, the lower, and if they blend together, we get something which has been actualized as the middle and thus becomes either higher for the preceding lower or lower for the succeeding higher. So we have three. What is three? We have, let's say, a higher one, a lower one. So when the higher one and the lower one mix with each other, you get a middle level, right? So this middle level which is there, that becomes probably a higher for the lower one. And this middle one is again the lower for the higher one. So how to interpret this? Let's try to go towards this part. So let's say I have this 0 and I have this 1, right? So from 0 to 1, I have a middle which probably comes to 0.5, right? Now this 0.5 which is there, that becomes a lower for this higher part, right? And this 0.5 is going to be a higher for this 0 or probably for 0.125, right? So what happens is we have these three numbers which are there, the 0 and the 1 which is there, but we also have a middle number which acts probably as a higher for the lower one and as a lower for the higher one, right? So this is how fundamentally it has been there, and probably that's why we are keeping these changes. And because we have three which should be divided together, that's why what we did is we tried to divide this one into three parts, that is 1 by 3, 2 by 3 and 1. So we have this first part and this we have the second part, and that's why probably what we have done is we try to adjust this accordingly to this part, right? As simple as that, so that we have three equal parts also, because this is law of three, right? So this becomes fundamental part, right? Now let's try to evaluate it in terms of octaves. So what is there in terms of octaves is do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti and do, right? So what we do is one is as per one, right? That's it. Now, if I need to go from 1 towards 2, right, I need to have equal parts. So from 1 to 2, I'll be having, let's say, 1 by 1.5, right? But we need to evaluate this numbers also. So what we do is we have an equation where we have starting from 1 and we keep on adding this 7 equal parts which is there. That is 1 by 8, 2 by 8, 3 by 8, 4 by 8, 5 by 8, 6 by 8, 7 by 8, 8 by 8. Probably 7 by 8 won't be coming into the picture. Why? Because we are just excluding that and having some specific parts only. Rather, we are excluding 6 by 8 and we are just having 7 by 8. So if we start with probably this numbers, yes, this is how the equation comes to, that is 1, right? After 1, the ray would be 1 plus 1 by 8 because we have this 1 by 8 part. Then 1 plus 1 by 4 because after 1 by 8, it is 2 by 8, which comes to 1 by 4. So it is 1 plus 1 by 4. Same is 1 plus 1 by 3, 1 plus 1 by 2, 1 plus 2 by 3, 1 plus 7 by 8. So 6 by 8 and 7 by 8, we can only have 7 numbers from this. Probably we can go to the last number, which is again an octave. So probably we have to just exclude 6 by 8 and we have to just stick to 7 by 8. We'll come to the later part and try and see why this 6 by 8 has been excluded and only 7 by 8 has been kept. Fine. So from 1 by 8 to 2, if we go for do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, and then do. So 1 to 2, we have these ratios which have been coming up, right? Now, what are these ratios and how they will be coming up? Again, into the same typical part. Let's try to take an example and try to explore how exactly things will become. So if we take an example of, let's say, 256 to 512, right? Which is again a doubling. If we go for, let's say, 256, let's say we have a calculator, and if we go for 256 and if we try to double that, we have 512. So we have taken 256 and 512, and if we go for, let's say, 256 and we try to go for half of that, that is divided by 2, we'll be getting 128. So what we need to do is accordingly we need to have the multiples which is there, right? Now let's try to understand that more of into details, right? So 128 is half of 256. So we have taken this 128, which is half of 256, and if we add this 256 and 128 we have 384. So 384 is the middle number between 256 and 512, right? And accordingly we had 128. So if we again half of 128, that is 64, and half of 64 is 32, and if we add these numbers, probably we'll be getting that, right? Now second, again accordingly the numbers that we'll be getting is 1 by 3, and second is 2 by 3. So this numbers probably will be adding, and probably if we just add 256 and go by this ratio, which is 32, 64, 85, 128, 171, 224, we'll be getting these additional numbers, right? So it's as simple as that. You can just work out on the calculator and try to understand this. Maybe things should be easier. So we have this series which is from 256 to 512, right? 256 to 512. Again, what happens is probably this keeps on accordingly having all the things together in terms of numbers. Now this is very important, simple for us to understand. Why? Because we are trying to mix two things now, right? We have one thing is octaves. Octaves is very simple. Octaves is, let's say we first of all are 1 to 7, and probably we try to see this in terms of law of 3, and we had to get a number. So probably what we did is we shifted from 7 towards 8, right? So from 7 we saw the fundamentals of 7, why this number is very important, and from 7 we shifted to 8, so that we have numbers of probably having the doubling part which is there, and also 1/3 part which will be coming together. So if we go for octaves with together only for law of 3, yes, probably this becomes much more easier. Why? Because these numbers do fit. I mean, like from 0.152 to doubling 0.25, then doubling 0.25 to 0.5, and from 0.5 to 1, yes, probably at least this octaves do fit in, right? Now this probably will be trying to explore more of into details, because this is one of the ratios which is there for moon to earth to sun, right? So probably yes, in terms of astronomy this is very important. We'll try to understand and explore more of it to details. So from 7 number we moved to number 8, and we had this octave which is there as per 8, and again we compared that with the octaves of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti and do. And this is just in terms of ratios. Why? Because see, I cannot start with 0, because anything with 0 cannot be either doubled or multiplied, or maybe it cannot be doubled or halved. Anything which is multiplied by 0 will be always 0. So we have to start with a number. And if we say from 1 to 2, yes, we will be getting this ratios. And if we get from 256 to 512, we just took an example, and this is the numbers that we got, right? Now this is of prominent importance to us, because this will be forming a very basic and fundamental thing, right? If you understand these things, probably the next thing should be easier to understand. And probably if you are not able to understand this thing, my humble request would be, please go through the first video, because that would be very important. If you understand the first video, you will be able to understand this. And if you understand this part, probably the next part should be easier for you to understand, because we'll be going for the law of 3, then we'll be going and maybe mixing it with law of 7, and together with the octaves we'll probably try to come out with certain formulas which would be very important for us, right? So this is how it is, and probably we'll try to go one by one and try to understand this together, because we need to go and understand first is the law of 3, and we need to also understand the law of 7, which is Heptaparaparshinokh, and together we need to understand this with the octaves. So we are at this stage only trying to go for octaves together with law of 3, and we'll try to blend it together and try to get for more details. At this stage probably we'll just try to understand this basic things which is there, and probably slowly and gradually try to get into the more details, right? So if till now you haven't watched our previous video, so our humble request would be to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. First of all, do like our videos, and please do comment, so that we can come out with fruitful videos for you. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care. And we'll soon meet you with the next session of these videos. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Take care.